I'm here with Bob Wallington. Hello, Bob.
Hi, Busy.
How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well.
Great. Let's talk about One Life. What can you tell me?
One Life. So One Life is an organisation that exists to connect and equip young people to become exceptional leaders in every sphere of society. So it's an organisation really with a vision to help young people realise the influence that they have and the way that that impacts and changes the places and the people that they go, and for them to really think about the way that their life is lived out and the things that they're living for and what that says to the world around them. And we've got a real vision, I guess, to train young people up so that they're characterful leaders. So it's not just about helping young people grow in gifting of leadership, but in the character that really defines leadership, and that, you know, I guess God gives us and works in us and through us through the things that we experience in life. So we want to send leaders out into every sphere of society. That's also a big part of what we're doing. So politics, government, sports, arts and entertainment, all those different places. We long to see those places full and populated with godly, characterful young leaders shining like Jesus would in those places.
Sounds great. Sounds brilliant. So what countries can we find One Life in? Because you guys are recently in Uganda.
Yeah, so we're, as an organisation, we're focused on the UK. So we feel like, for us, God's put a bit of a fence around the UK, and that's our mission field, really. And that's where we really want to raise up and equip and see, you know, our heart is for the UK and to see change here and see God's kingdom come in every sphere of society. But we do stuff outside of the UK as well, just to help, I guess, young leaders engage with the UK in a new way. So help them look back on the UK and see, oh, that's, you know, this is what the rest of the world's like, and that's what the UK is like, and oh, okay, that needs to impact something of the way that I live. So recently took a team to Uganda, and that trip's all about blessing the Ugandan people and helping them and the young leaders there. But more so, it's about the young leaders who we take carrying something forever, in the way that they express leadership. That it would be full and seasoned with this idea of, oh my goodness, what I do and what I lead and the way that I live must have an impact and must change something of the world around me as well. So.
You also did something else recently. You did 2 back-to-back marathons, am I right? How did that come about?
So we have an intern program in One Life. So guys that come and journey with us for a few months, and one of the jobs the interns do is to come up with a fundraising idea. And they're usually some craziness of, you know, like some crazy idea they come up with. And of course, I have to get involved, which is great fun, apart from when they come up with ideas like, we're going to do 2 back-to-back marathons around the Isle of Wight. And then you think, oh my goodness, that's going to take some pulling off. So we did that. We didn't run them, we hiked them. So we did 1 marathon in 1 day, finished about 6:30, 7 o'clock, and then we got up really early the next day to begin the next one. It was amazing. So the Isle of Wight is beautiful, stunning place. So next year they want to do Face Your Fear for One Life, and they're trying to get me to jump out of a plane, which I think I'm just not going to do. You know, that's like, unless we raise a significant amount of money, I'm not jumping out of a plane. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. So
you must love what you do if you're going to go and do things like walk 2 marathons, but what is it that makes you want to do it? So did you just wake up one day and decide that this is what you wanted to do, or was there a kind of process that took you here? Yeah,
so I guess the 2 things really. First of all, someone did it for me when I was young, and someone invested in me as a young person and said, hey Bob, you know, they actually spoke to me about the call to discipleship, the call to follow Jesus isn't just, you know, isn't just like a, I don't know, it's like a dynamic thing. It's like he calls the disciples. When he first calls them, he says, come and follow me and I'll teach you to catch men. I'll teach you to do what I do. And that's, you know, when you look at what Jesus did, he did change the people that he met. He influenced the places that he went. And that is real, that's leadership. Leadership is influence. And so someone sort of spoke to me about that and then gave me opportunities and helped me grow in the gifting and the character of what it really meant to be a leader. And I don't know about you, but when I look around the world, I see so much that's not quite right with leadership. There's so many, and sometimes even in the church, it can be hard the way that we see things led and the character of some of the leaders that are around us. And we just want to see change in that. And we know that actually, you know, equipping young people and speaking to young people about what it really means to have character, to grow character, and to really invest in character is going to impact the UK on a huge scale and impact everyone that these young people meet and interact with. So that's why I'm passionate about it, because I believe it will bring about change in the UK. And I know when people lead well, when they're led by people who are exceptional, who know really what it is to lead, usually what happens is the team underneath them thrives. Everyone thrives. And everyone gets to do the kind of things that make them come alive. And good leaders are often really good at that. They spot what makes someone come alive, and then they find a way to get them doing it. And yeah, there's loads of other things we need to do as well, which don't make us come alive, the nitty gritty. But often that's what you see. And I think if we saw that in sports and politics and business and media and all those different areas in between, we'd see something special across the UK. Yeah.
Great. So kind of one of the things we're looking at here is kind of how you stay the course, how you keep going with your faith, with the things that you do in life. And obviously you're building up leaders to go out into the world and do that. So what kind of advice would you give to them on staying the course and keep going when things get tough? Okay.
I guess the world around us feeds us, doesn't it, this idea that unless something feels good or it feeds us and what we need or what we think we need, we don't really need to engage with it, or we shouldn't be engaging with it. And I just think we need to recognise, first of all, that's not right. And there's actually a challenge that we have as the church to reverse that culture, to say, hey, that's not right. When things are hard, that doesn't mean that we need to press the eject button and get out of there as soon as possible. If you look at Scripture, everyone in Scripture, to some degree, goes through like this period of refining, of real testing, of real, they have to endure it. Joseph is a classic example, isn't it? Like, who spends, he gets these dreams and he's really headstrong and maybe a bit proud when he shares these dreams with his brothers, and then it all falls apart and he spends like 13 years in prison wondering, what is going on, what's happened. And in prison, God refined him. God crafted in him the character that was necessary to hold, the position of Prime Minister of Egypt, basically. And you think there's richness in the crafting. Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison. And and Nelson Mandela used to get asked the question a lot, like, how did you change? How did you differ from the man who went in to the man who came out? And he said, he used to hate the question. He hated it. But he said, the man who went in, I was headstrong and I was easily stung, and I was, and the man who came out was mature. And that's what enduring does to us. It's like we mature, we grow, and it develops in us this something that nothing else can, unless we've endured the hardships and we've gone through the tough times and we've seen God in those tough times with us. Then we become more of the, we craft more of the character that's needed for other things that God has in store for us. So I guess keep the big picture in view, as it were, that it's going to come to an end, and when it does, there will be something of gold refined in you through that process.
So what about in your own life? Have you ever had any struggles or hard times that have made you want to quit or not stay the course? What can you tell us about that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think when I was, especially as a teenager growing up, I'd probably given my life to Jesus, and when I was about maybe 9 or 10, and I can remember being, being really kind of, captivated by this Jesus who I'd been introduced to, and I was, not growing up in a family. In fact, my parents came to faith when I was about 7 or 8, and so it was a big change for me and for our family. And suddenly, we weren't playing football on a Sunday morning. My brother and I, we were going to church, and my parents made that a real value for us, which taught us some amazing things as well, and I thank them for that every day. But as I grew up acknowledging Jesus myself, it came to this point where I was like, I don't know if I want this. I don't know if there's a cost to this at school. And I'd seen one of my friends really hurt at school because he talked about Jesus and he talked about his faith, and people didn't get it. And in that time in my life, about 13, I was like, I don't want to talk to people about Jesus. I don't want anyone to know that I follow Jesus. I'm quite happy at home to talk about him, and I'm quite happy at church and at youth group to talk about him. But at school, I'm not going to go there. And there came this point for me, I can remember, where I was in a sex education lesson of all places, and I can remember the teacher was really excited about the subject, and I was sat right at the front of the class by accident, and at the end of the lesson he just says, okay, I've got some questions, and he asks these questions, and then he says, who who in this room, when they get to 16, thinks they'll be ready for a sexual relationship? And I can remember in that moment, in my heart, going, I want to say yes to that question because I know all my friends are going to say yes right now. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see everyone's hands going up, and especially the lads at the back who were like, yeah, definitely, And I was inside, I was just like, oh God, you know what? This is so hard. I know what this could cost me here, but I want to be fully yours. I want to commit everything that I am to you. And I can remember saying, God, I'm all in. That's the phrase that I used. That's just, I'm all in. And I kept my hand down in that moment. And it was like, for me, that's a real pivotal moment of like, what do I do here? Do I just blend in with the crowd forever and ever? Do I just, go along? Do I keep living this life as sort of two different people? Or am I going to bring things together? And the Bible talks in James about faith and deeds. When they are apart, it's like you can't have faith without deeds. It's like your faith has to impact the way that you live some way. And actually, on reflection, when those two things come together, there's life. When those two things are apart, it's dead. But when those two things are together, there's like life. And for me, in that moment, when I kept my hand down in that lesson, faith and deeds came together and it brought life. And for me, it was like, oh, wow, I saw it first, right then and there. And I thought I got away with the decision. So, the rest of the lesson went on. And then my friend Jo at the back of the class stuck her hand up and she said, oh, just wondering why Bob didn't have his hand up for that question earlier. And
thanks, Jo.
Thank you, Jo, yeah. And so I had to kind of, I turned around and I said, hey, look, some of you know I'm a Christian, some of you don't. And I just want to say I am. And I believe God's design for sex is in the context of marriage. And when I'm 16, I don't think I'm going to be married. So I don't think I'll be ready for a sexual relationship. And I look back on that point as one of the hardest decisions that I ever made. But the moment where my faith came alive and everything changed from that point. So I guess I'd say to people who might be in that situation as well, hang on in there. There's life in the pain, and there's life in pushing through and enduring in the tough times. Yeah.
So it's a big question, but what is the best example of God's love that you've ever seen?
The best example of God's love that I've ever seen? Okay, that is a big question. I think, for me, I look at people like Mother Teresa, and I think, she was an amazing lady, and the thing that she carried in her is this care and love for basically God's creation, anyone who, especially on the streets of Calcutta, where she picked people up from on the streets who were, dying, who were dirty, they were smelly, they were the worst, diseased people. And she hugged them, she touched the untouchables, she, embraced them, and she showed them love and affection. And in a way, she did what Jesus did, which was to connect with those people who society didn't want to. In fact, society saw as unclean, as the untouchables, where Jesus touched those people, he embraced them and he showed them, that despite whatever it was they were carrying, whether it be a hurt, or a physical thing or a spiritual thing, he was going to meet them exactly where they were at, and he would look through all that stuff, and he wasn't worried about the effect it might have on him. And Mother Teresa wasn't worried about the effect it might have on her. She just loved them and touched them and embraced them and met people where they were really at in their pain. So for me, there's a big challenge in that. And everything in me when I meet people, I've just been to Uganda, working in a hospital for a little bit, out there with a team of young leaders, as we said earlier, and everything in you wants to sort of stay clean and but actually when God's love wells up inside you, you engage with the people in a whole new way. And I want to be someone who does that, who sees people like that as well. Yeah.
Great. And one final question: what is next for Bob?
What is next for Bob? So actually, do you know, I'm really excited to say I'm having a rest. That's what's next for Bob. So it's been a busy summer so far. I've been with the Soul Survivor festivals as well, and doing lots here, which is amazing. And now I get to have a rest. And I'm really pleased to say that. I think often, people get the impression that, when we're in leadership or when we're carrying, something like an organisation like One Life, we just work. And it is hard work at times, but also there's a real great thing when we put rest as a real value in what we're doing. And God hasn't called us to kill ourselves, slogging our guts out for the kingdom. He's called us to enjoy it and love it, and also to find rest in those moments as well. So I'm going on holiday. Yeah, I don't know where yet, but somewhere. Yeah.
Great. Well, it's been brilliant chatting today, Bob. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.